Раз, раз, раз. Раз, два, три. Раз, раз, раз.
Добрый день, уважаемые.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear friends. We are starting the person in charge some additional impetus. In this case, we shouldn't limit it just to state projects. Any product is considered as part of such projects. They are not left inside. They are usually integrated in the existing state programs. I would like to give the floor to the first speaker and to proceed to our discussion. I would like to give the floor to Oleg Belov, Director of the Project Management Center of the Russian Presidential Academy of National Economy and Public Administration. This center works a lot with the federal office. A lot of norms are being developed now with the help of this center. They have already accumulated Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers for their invitation. I will try to be quite brief with my speech. I will brief you on some of the results that we have already achieved. I will also be talking about some challenges. I'm sorry to jump in, but you will be given only 5 or 7 minutes maximum. Yes, when we only started to work on those projects. Well, they used to be some of our priorities. Now they were brought to a national scale. Well, we analyzed the different foreign and home experience, and we identified 5 major challenges that we have. First and foremost, we need to identify our common goals. We need to focus on the major points in order to understand what we should do. So, simply speaking, we need to understand what stands for the so-called project or design management, what falls within the national interests. Secondly, we came to the conclusion that it's very interesting to and important to know all the elements of the picture and maybe sometimes do some decomposition of them. Yes, now that we have national goals for every single project, and we also have some project-based indicators still, in order to achieve results and in order to understand the performance of those results, we need to also bear that in mind. We also need, in the point number 3, have some plans, but at the same time they should be directly linked to the budgetary aspects. There should be some space for flexibility. Then we also have to implement some regular monthly monitoring, and also it is needed for traceability and monitoring of the results. If something cannot be fulfilled, then we need to identify those bottlenecks that prevent us from doing that. If you cannot measure something, then you cannot just manage the process. Number 5, and the last but not the least, something that also was mentioned during the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, is that never forget about your results behind all those indicators, because sometimes we keep track of the indicators and at the end of the day it turned out that you failed to achieve the targeted result. The situation is always dynamic, and you need to be reasonably flexible. If for example, some new technologies appear that turn out to be more efficient, then you need to reconsider your results and probably do some replanning. What are the main challenges? So it took us 2 years to do a part of implementation. When we start to use TUCAS, then we introduced a new pyramid-based system. Now we have the so-called design management system. It includes 3 levels. The first one, the so-called strategic level, where we set the main goals. Number 2 is the portfolio level. Here we have quite a few questions as to how we should work with different projects and what we should do it on a routine basis. How are we supposed to pick projects and to link them to the financial resources? And the lowest one is the operating level, where we work with routine tasks. So we also have 4 pillars or supporting blocks that cannot be left inside. The first one is the motivation system. I think that we absolutely need that material motivation, but it also can be of non-material nature. Then training from the point of view that people must really understand what they want to learn. Then also knowledge base or database. We know that there is big data, a lot of different information. There are various forms of documents that cannot be easily monitored and processed. And decision decision-making process, decision-making system. Some of the challenges have already been tackled, and a lot of issues have been sorted out. Some issues are still outstanding. According to Law 214, is very clear. But if we look at Law 170, there we have a lot of strategic planning that haven't been harmonized between each other. Colleagues who start relevant discussions about that, they ask the following question: how can we live with all that? When we look at the documents, one of the direction man was of strategic nature, and we saw that there were up to and over 200 different SKUs. As for the management, I think that it should be on certain our portfolios. You need to be able to prioritize the resources that you have. Speaking about projects, we have quite a number of challenges, and one of them that we sometimes lack decent performance evaluation. But in fact, we do really need that. Simply speaking, when we try to work with some passport analytics, we can see that it's growing day by day. I mean, some of the indicators, but we cannot explain what guides this process and how it actually can be displayed. And one of others, integration conditions, it was also raised last year. I hope that we'll be able to finalize as soon as we are done with the some scope of work, is the link between the strategic part, budgetary part, and portfolio part. Of course, the budget cycle lays at the foundation of it, but how all the elements are accumulated there, how are they all integrated into the common process? That's the question. I would like to summarize now and say that the system, it should be getting more and more perfect. This mechanism was created last year, and the pilot project was tested on some of the federal and regional projects. We did it in order to test it on its performance and efficiency, and also we wanted to identify those obstacles that prevent us from achieving better results. We try to analyze the strategy, to analyze the set of tools that we understand at the state level, at the tools level, etc. We want to understand what results we want to achieve and want to identify weak points preventing us from achieving this or that result. The next one is the decision making block. It's all about methodology, about different processes. The question is whether or not the system is structured well enough to meet all those requirements. We know that in some of regions they say, yes, you know, even if everything works fine there, but they know that it takes a lot of paperwork to do that. Here is the question of decision making, because it's all those bureaucratic issues, they take a lot of time. Then we also need to identify those responsible for different scope of liabilities. It sometimes turned out that one tries to teach the other, etc. As a result, we, for example, send some training list and ask people why you actually were sent for this training. Were you enrolled to do that? No, they just sent us because we had the time to do that. That is why heads of the office need to understand whether or not the people have enough skills and knowledge to be entitled to that. And the last block is for stimulated and for assessing different parameters for its efficiency. We have already started to discuss that before the discussion as part of the whole process. We need to have some kind of a system of coordinates. People must be really aware of why, of the bonus system, why they actually get this or that motivation package, etc. We need to have all the components in place at the design level, at the decision-making level, etc. We have to have a system for decision-making, like I said, and also materials as to how this process should be organized. And please don't forget that you should pay attention to all the blocks. Apart from project management, there are other directions as well. Otherwise, there will be just distorted. Just a short comment. As for project or design management, we will wait for the Deputy Minister for Economic Development to comment on that.
And we'll have more specific conversation, I believe. I just want to say that when we speak about the budget cycle, the budget is being formed on a functional basis, on the departmental classifications, and the state program are usually just additional layer of the same bulk of information, financial information about the budget, and this layer is now covering about 50% of all the budget. That is the program part. And we are saying that the non-program part has to decrease, and those budget expenses, they have to be increased. And I've heard it, but I wanted to comment once again. I do not want to set projects against programs. Projects and current activities for using budget means. I think the projects have to be left for super priority assignments and tasks, and the control over which has to be more intense. Of course, it's an additional administrative workload, but still, it shouldn't be projects for the sake of projects. And now we have the Deputy Minister of Economics, and we are approaching slowly and surely to the issues of programs and projects. And I would like to give the floor to... We have agreed maybe we'll be speaking about the project office. Would like to give the floor to our colleague from Kazakhstan, the State Secretary of the Ministry of Finance of Republic of Kazakhstan, Baujan Taktayev. The State Secretary is the level of the Deputy Minister, with one specific aspect. If others Deputy Ministers are assigned by the Prime Minister, and then the President of the Republic is assigning the State Secretary. This is the one feature of the government management in Kazakhstan. So please, Baujan Taktayev, the floor is yours. What are your goals, and how do you work on the project-based approach? Thank you for the invitation. I want to say right away that I really like this forum. It has been the second day, very interesting topics, and I'm very pleased to be a part of it and to listen. Speaking about today's topic, and I think Kazakhstan has somewhat similar trends for about 1.5 years ago. At the end of 2017, a decision has been made that we are going to implement project-based approach for certain specific tasks. You call it a national project. In our case, it's also we have a center for project management in each ministry. They have different names. In our ministry, it's a one project office. One project office called increasing revenue collections or tax collections. We have 8 initiatives, and this is what it looks like. Vice Minister is supervising, Deputy Minister is supervising. A team has been made, and the project office is taking people in from different structures, from the central apparatus, and they have been working for over a year. And the very first results were seen in a year later, I think in April 2018, when we've launched the system Astana 1, automated system for customs and border control administration. While previously you had to write your customs declaration for hours, and now within 1 minute you can fill in this customs declaration and it will be registered online. It's a very good and positive result. And what we came to at some point in time, we had a situation that this project office was simply transformed it into a department or a committee of the public revenues. It includes the tax people, financial police, and the customs departments. My personal opinion is that the project office it is considered to be that this is some kind of innovation. But on the other hand, when I was a student back in Soviet time, they call it temporary workforce. Temporary workforce. And we had been transformed into a standing department in the Committee of the Public or State Revenues. And the deputy chair of the committee was working on these issues now, but now he or she has to work on these initiatives, and they have a lot of important priority tasks, such as customs administrations, merchandise markings, traceability of the merchandise. There is a big cluster of issues. I've signed a decree, and now they're no longer temporary workforce, not just a project office, but as a department within our committee. Albeit bureaucracy persists, and they have to give reports to different organizations, and even the reporting system now, if you think back at the USSR time, Soviet time, there was a network graph, and of course in 30 years many things have changed, but the mechanism still stays the same. And if you need a project approach and when you need simply current activities, I believe one example is our project activity, that yes, we had some high priority tasks. They were on the stage of implementation, and at some point in time, it was no longer a priority task, but a standing or regular routine task. So it's sort of morphed into our current activities. So probably we'll have new challenges and tasks, but for the parity's sake, we are going to build another project office. We'll be filling it up with another team. The beauty of the project is that you have less bureaucracy. While different departments, even within one ministry, they have a lot of problems in their relations. But if it is just one project office, it's easier, it's better, and so forth. And they solve tasks really fast. So the project-based approach is very good in this regard. And I think when we'll have another project, we'll build another project office. It's a standard managerial approach when you work in any state organization, not even a state organization. In business, you can use this approach also. We may give it different names, but the essence is the same. Basically, it is an approach. And what Yuri has been speaking about, budgeting when you build a project office. I'm as a person who always involved in going and asking people for money. It helps to get additional revenues and money. Thank you. Thank you very much. You finished it up on a very positive note. And this is what the audience is waiting for. Why do we need projects, and why do we need project approaches to get money? I think everybody was quite enthusiastic. If projects help you to get more money and more budgets, this is what we want. We want to implement project-based approach. Azar Talipov, the deputy head of the Ministry of the Economic Development, would like to give the floor to our colleague and to invite him to discuss on the topic of how the projects fit into the state programs. In our opinion, there is a harmony. You can really make them a part of any state programs. And we use the project-based approach to identify 1 or 2 or 3 business lines, and then we run with it, we implement it in the format of the project. But in terms of accounting, you can integrate it easily into the existing program. And of course, we assume that the non-program part in state programs has to be, concised, cut down. Yes, please. Dear colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to speak at the Moscow Financial Forum. Traditionally, it has become the platform where we have professional discussions of very relevant issues. And now, you and I are facing another challenge to fulfill the May's degrees executive order of the president. The goals are very ambitious, and It will require all the federal and the local authorities to reformat their work, reformat their goals, and the ultimate goal is the results and achieving the indicators which had been identified in this document of the President of Russia. And for this sake, we need to step up instruments. We have to integrate these instruments for the project-based principles. Ministry of Economics and Development have prepared the amendments to the normative acts to reflect these national programs and projects, federal projects, with a view of connecting goals and assignments for the national projects, which are part of it. And of course, it's quite a complex thing, but still, I believe that now we are on the stage of practical implementation, and as it was noted by the colleagues today, now the process is ongoing of forming those passports of national projects, and all of this is done on the basis of the mechanism of the state programs. Now, events of the national projects, they are events of the state programs themselves, and in this regard, there should be this interconnection or alignment. We have to actualize our programs, and it's quite a complex process, but still we need to do this. Moreover, after the state programs and their goals will be actualized in accordance with the national goals, then the same kind of work has to be done on a regional level. And the regional programs have to be also reformatted, and their goals have to be aligned or interconnected. We have been speaking a lot about the budgeting of this process and how and to what extent we, and even our colleagues have pointed out that if they implement a project or any event for that sake, using the project-based approach, they have more chance of getting finances and budget for these projects. But again, the cornerstone thing is the goal. Why are we doing this or that investments? Why are we carrying certain budget expenses? And eventually we have to measure it based on results. Unfortunately, the existing system, I would like to update this issue, looks a bit differently, because we have a budget process of forming the budget. It is ahead of the issues of setting goals for the project. And very often we, like in our today's realities, in public programs, we are trying to measure them up against the budget. A budget is a financial document which identifies where are we going to spend money, but why. At first, we make a decision that we decide the volume of finance, and then we think where we spend this money. I think it is something to think about, to work, and this kind of program target approach could be the answer. I'm really pleased that this process, which today the federal government is implementing on the basis of organizing passports of national projects for implementing national goals, it is built according to this very principle. First, let's define the actions or events which are moving us towards the goal. Let's see the viability. Will these actions and goals help us to achieve these goals? Let's evaluate all the benefits and effects, and only then we make a decision about the volume of financing for these goals. This process is very complex, it's not complete, but now this is how it all looks like. And probably, as a part of state programs, little by little, we have to move to this format. I would like to remind you that in the last year, we jointly with our colleagues from Ministry of Finance and the Federal Project Office, we had been implementing the pilot project of moving five state programs into the project-based programs like pilots. We've done them as pilots. And we haven't been able to realize fully that set of events we initially devised to do. So we plan that as a part of the pilot programs, we will have a ranging mechanism for events in terms of their financeability. But at the same time, the ranging methodology had also included the efficiency of the measures which have been proposed for financing in terms of achieving a big result. So, given the fact that now we have a goal to implement national goals, we in this cycle were not able to do that. But we do hope that in the next year we will go back to this issue, we will be more responsible about it, and we will try to offer this efficient methodology, as we think. So eventually the results and goals have to become the baseline for the whole system to work in a quality way. Thank you very much, and I would like to add something to that. This is the information that in addition to 5 pilot state-run projects in the Ministry of Finance, we have our own initiatives on optimization and reformatting our own state program, which was not the part of those 5 state programs. And based on our experience and example, we felt all the difficulties and all the problems which you have mentioned right now. So the fact that the state programs are being approved and being renewed after the budgetary process, we understand that also. But we know it's a little bit far-fetched, but still making changes into a state program has to be based on some normative act or bylaw when we get this bylaw ready. And this normative act or a bylaw is formed only after the budget will be adopted, which basically gives us the baseline for making changes. At the same time, any government agency, FAIF, which is responsible for implementation of any state program, it sees problem prioritization. When, for example, we tried to optimize our own state program, which we thought maybe it's too bulky, too heavy, maybe we've had an excessive number of indicators could be integrated, could be more comfortable. We saw that we can do this only having to wait for these April changes in this year. And we felt the need that this actually, that before the budget cycle, any government agency responsible for the program, they have to do some prioritization as they are building their budget bid. They have to set the priority, discuss it within the government. For example, okay, this is what we want. They have to approve this priority, and then they come with their budget bid when the budget cycle is being formed with this priority. It's not necessarily you have to do it from one center. You can do it. Or those people who are responsible for the programs can do that. And they are GRBS. They are responsible for the state program, and they can take into consideration these priorities in the current budget cycle. But it probably requires the possibility of updating a state program not after the results, but just before we do it. Intuitively, we feel it that we have to correct our state programs twice a year, because after the budget process, of course, you need to streamline or align the project, but before the budget process, you need to do the prioritization. After the budget process, because you will still have to align the projects, but the prioritization has to be done before the project. And I think it should be those state agencies which are part of this budgetary process. I don't see any contradiction. We're speaking about the same things, but you simply have to write it out correctly in the normative documentation. But it's right, the time is high.
I would like to add one thing. I absolutely agree with you. Moreover, the process of introducing new changes and amendments needs some simplification and prioritization. We prepared quite a big set of changes that we do expect, together with our colleagues from the Ministry of Finance, will be discussed. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that that if you look at today's pictures and the results, you can see that regardless of the finance, state program indicators that we use to assess the performance can tell us a lot. If, for example, your state program costs 10 ruble or 5 ruble, still the results remain the same, which is not correct. I think that it's not the right approach to the state performance indicators. If, for example, we change some finance coefficient, etc., then it means that it has a direct impact on the outcome. It means that they can be attained earlier or quite the opposite later. And of course, we have to do all the necessary adjustment. As of today, it's not the case. We are not doing that. We need to think it over. Those suggestions that we have prepared as part of this set of documents, they were really taken into consideration. We'll go back to this issue, but I would like now to give the floor to the regions. As far as I know, today we have representatives of the regions who understand that implementation of the national projects will inevitably require participation at the local level as well. Even though those projects are federal, still national projects that will use as this basis as the foundation, they will be well examined, and a certain scope of work will be accomplished at the regional level. We know that there are some project approaches already in place there, but they don't have an all pervasive presence. We would like to ask someone to share their experience. I would like to start with Belgrade, and I would like to give the floor to Olga Pavlova, deputy head of the Belgrade region. Thank you very much for such an opportunity to speak in front of all of you in order to share our experience. But before I proceed to my presentation, I would like to say that based on the discussion that we have just had, I want to explain you how we can understand whether or not this or that solution fit in our projects. Yesterday, during the plenary sessions, we talked a lot about how certain predictions can actually shape our future. Human capital investment and also capital flow can have a direct impact whether or not we will make it to the top 5 economies. You know that, yes, of course, we have some plans for the forthcoming 8 years. So far, we were growing in line with the set goals. We have already managed to achieve a lot. And it's probably it's useless to say about what has already been done, but still we already launched over 300,000 different projects at different levels, both at the bottom level, I mean at the municipal level, at also the regional level. 60% of the public officials have been involved in this process, as well as other 30% that's also involved in different scopes of works. Oleg has already referred to the so-called foundation or basis of work. We have also some organizational structures. In the framework of those structures, we're trying to develop different competences. We try to automate major processes and also work on different motivation programs as well, including material motivation. Infrastructure is the key to success. We cannot go without it. So we have local project office. We also have representative offices in every single town and different entities, etc. But it all depends on the scope of works. Of course, we have also some inter-industry establishment. We have the municipal and as well as mini-municipal administrative centers. What about the effects that we have already got? Well, we apparently can see that it impacted the business circles as well, the infrastructure in general. Of course, I want to talk mostly about financial side of it, as well as investment, but business can really see that some of the administrative barriers were removed because we automated quite a number of different processes. You can now apply for a lot of things and do it electronically. Very often, by the way, we say that it's very difficult to make some decent money if you work as a military servant, but you can do it right now if you really do your job properly. We just need to show it to people that you really can do that if you comply with certain requirements and rules. We were asked to estimate the economic performance of the programs. We did some calculation, but of course we didn't cover some humanitarian projects, but we saw that we managed to decrease the investment phase of the project by 23%. Also from 10 to 20%. This is the percentage that shows that we now need less time for some funds allocations, also due to the fact that some of the resources are received from the federal budget, etc., and the structure is more transparent and clear. But the biggest effect lives within the fact that the thinking of the public officials has been changed. They are more and more involved in the process. They know how all the structures are organized, etc. They know how it is done, both from the economic and also financial point of view. We also created a special center for competences. Well, it still needs to be developed further on at the regional level, but at the same time we have a very good material base. We also talked about it with Vasily Ivanovich right before the session, and I said that we have both internal and external different funds. We talked about such issues as salary, and I put it clear that people should really understand what they get their money for some current activities, for a certain period of time. We also motivate people to initiate some projects. Well, it's of course all about different level, and it's subsidized by some additional reserves. I'm not going to talk about motivation system a lot, but since we have some financial people here, still I want to explain how the motivational fund is structured. You see that we consider personal contribution and also teamwork. We keep track of everything. We have a real mechanism in place. We analyze different key performance indicators. If there are some deviations, then it has a direct impact on the final remuneration. Motivation is that is linked to the daily operations is also there. You can see some benchmarks that are segregated into different groups, like quarterly ones and others. We don't create any fake or artificial projects. They are all vivid, they are all real. In the framework of the salary fund, we have some special monitoring system in place in order to keep track of all the payments, etc. Just like in business and everywhere else, we use also single-use motivation that is applied in certain cases. Design project competences also segregated between different players. We know that some of them are involved in different parts of work. Some of them are involved in the process, but at the same time, each of the players have their own motivation systems. We have both mental as well as material motivation. Performance is directly linked to a certain motivation and also remuneration system. And the more results you achieve, the more projects you are involved in, the the more you get in the end. Apart from that, we also work on some new initiatives when we make new plans and we try to prepare some new directions to explore. Then we form some project portfolios. We are trying to also address different issues to the governors, to the ministers. So it's first of all is taken to the governor's office, then it is analyzed together with the whole team. They consider different indicators that is then handed over for work. This is some of the figures that we have for last year and for this year. We had 171 projects last year, and now this figure turned into 192. We also see some of the projects that were scheduled for this year by the Ministry of Finance for our region, but we wouldn't have attained such results if it hadn't been for the governors team. So the governors set certain goals for us. Now we are going to unfold such a strategic planning also at the federal level. We realize that if we work this way, then we'll be able to achieve this kind of results. Yes, in the federal level should be done a little bit different. Absolutely. Our dear colleagues, especially those from the regions, you see that there is nothing to be scared of. Those who use this kind of approach, those who use such platforms and only are about to start using this kind of tools can see that, well, at least judging from this presentation, there is a certain there are certain things that you also get back and you can really achieve great results. Apart from that, regions are always willing and ready to share their competence with you. I invited some speakers to our panel discussion. I'm not going to name any regions, so I talked to a representative of one of the regions that has a very good knowledge base as well as competences. So I asked them whether they wanted to take the floor to tell about their experience. They got a new leader there in the region. But also I should say that I had information that date back to like some years ago, and they said that they are already working on the projects and programs that you were referring to. And by the way, the speaker is not with us here today. You know that you can look at this approach from different angles. There is no universal rigid approach to that. A lot depends on the leader. On the leader who can find a young, enthusiastic person willing to implement all those strategies and to bring some of the ideas to life. If the leader stays within the project and these programs, then of course you will be able to achieve the set goals. Both experience are good. It depends, of course, on the region. I would like to introduce a representative of the Leningrad region, but it's not going to be like a full-fledged electrification like the one we have just seen, but it's going to be a little bit different, a little bit more constrained. At the same time, it has already turned out to be a success. Dmitry Yalov, please, over to you. Thank you very much, Yuri, and the deputy head of the government at the Leningrad region. I would like to start with a bit of provocation. If we talk about projects governance and state programs, I should say the following. We need to make sure that these are two things, and we don't want the same thing happen to projects governance, just the way it was with the state programs. If you find at least some vice presidents who have already looked through some state programs, who really can say a lot of good words about that, so then I will definitely shake your hand. So, which is not really good. You know that the Minister of Finance were very enthusiastic and recommended state programs. A lot of different departments took them on board. But now, unfortunately, we have quite a considerable risk, and we are really risking to find ourselves in a similar situation that the one we have with state programs. Just like it all happened in the Leningrad region. We, within our department, have only 15 key projects that were integrated in the project governance program. Now we have, on top of those 15 ones, we have 70 more that also were put forward as some of our priorities for our work. So in order to understand that, they were separated into two groups, national ones and prioritized one. So one of the main challenges is to how actually avoid any kind of mishap on the part of the imitation, etc. How can we do that? Well, we can answer it in the following way. Please look at what exactly you agree to, what is integrated in the project, and how comprehensive and consistent we are in doing that. I'm just trying to go through all the mistakes that we had at the project stage, so I don't want to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. If it's not described well enough from the very beginning, and if you don't sort out all the points that it includes, then there is no need to proceed to the next stage. Then we proceed to stage 0. You also need to think what should be included in this very stage. As for federal projects, we have already discussed all that. It's so clear. But as for regional projects, sometimes you include some very interesting projects like full-scale or big construction projects, but instead you refer to other projects which do not really meet the criteria that was set. We have already been working in that domain for a few years, and even now I still have situations where I meet people and they say, okay, here is the project team, etc. But sometimes we see a lot of people who really want to kind of be part of projects, but at the same time it turns out there are too many of them. We might allocate them to different groups, but as a rule it takes no more than 10 people to do that. Any project is a vivid body, and you need to monitor its pulse, meaning that if you did nothing about it for 2 or 3 months, probably it's already dead, and it makes no sense to stick to that any longer. I would say that it would be more reasonable to organize some meetings on a regular basis, not on a daily basis, but on a very regular one, because you need to keep track of the progress and to stay within the information field. Another one is another point is the so-called inter-industry or inter-establishment contradiction and argument. I think that none of us has had any experience, a positive experience, working on that. We neither had this kind of experience. When you invite somebody from a different committee and offer some money, it always leads to some internal tension. And it makes us ask, why do you actually taking care of such a travel? Probably you should do something more solid. We also had a very interesting discussion between the Minister of Finance and Economy. Yes, and I heard that first we need to set priorities, our goals, and then we'll proceed to the issue of financing. But in reality, it's quite the opposite. But still, we have already gained some positive experience in the Leningrad region. We managed as a financial bloc to find some very good solution. And as for our priorities projects, we already know how to work with them, even though something can be a priority, sometimes it just don't have funds to be allocated to. And the last but not the least is the principle of the involved customer. And when it comes to regions, then of course the customer is the governor, and if the governor is involved in the process, there is a real chance that the result will be achieved. We haven't had any regional committee that wouldn't be monitored by the governor. That is why I would like to say that since a lot of projects are now being developed at the federal level, I want you to really take seriously such issue as the project management, and also look at different project approaches from a different angle. Yes, I know that what you have just said is really clear, but probably you need to clarify a little bit some budgetary issue. I saw no contradiction between the two, or what you said, I mean, the Ministry of Finance, very important.
It's important to understand who we are, those who define priorities. We are these federal services, and we are the services, federal agencies, which are aligning our priorities. So we are part of the budgetary processes. So the priorities which we see for ourselves, whether it's called a project or basic event or event within a state program, it's a question of this GRBC, which is a state agency. But if it is a priority in their bid for finance, they will show it. And basically, this is what they do. Even today, they did it yesterday, and they'll do it in the future. Maybe without this kind of understanding in that finance bid, which you send, you should show the priorities. And the current financing should be reconsidered. I don't see any contradiction. We have actually seen it at this 6 informal pilot project. They need to make changes into the state program before we build priorities, because when we're making these amendments, we can discuss priorities, we can fix priorities also in discussions, and then we can get into the budgetary processes, after which inevitably we have to align this. So this is the right thing to do. And I believe that methodologically this is the right position. We have to understand who is defining this priority. First of all, these are members to the budgetary process. They report to the government, and the government is identifying these priorities. I do not see any contradictions. This is why I've invited the key professionals from the Ministry of Finance. They are representatives of the key departments, so that you could feel discussion, see discussion. And before that, I would like to use the phrase, the terminology which we've heard, functional, functional well, functional sequence. It's a quintessence or a contradiction between the traditional project management system and the project management system. The conventional management system, it's about hierarchy, it's about jobs and structure and schedules, and everybody used to it. But the project-based management, all the modern, fashionable management methods, that tells you can do it flexible, you can do the temporary workforce, you can work on an issue or on a program or a task in a flexible way without this structure. So I want to say, without giving names, without giving examples, but this is a real life case. Some young, some forward-thinking technocrats who are getting their training at different seminars, courses, and so forth. They are in the presidential pool. They are pushed off the cliff, and they are taught to communicate with modern methods. But still, when they have an issue between them, who is going to be responsible for the result of that specific challenge you're working on? Like in what subprogram? By content, by the meaning, this task should be the part of the subprogram such and such, which hierarchically is not a part of the deputy ministry or the head of the ministry, but somebody from the organizational structure is supervising this business line. So it's a discussion, and this discussion has been quite lengthy. It ended up with a joint decision that, okay, we have to align it with this staff schedule. So these wells, functional wells, these are open-minded people, but still, having had a conversation, they said, no, I'm not going to be responsible for the result. Result for which people are working who are not my subordinates. This is a typical example of functional well, and it dominates today. I would like to give the floor to, as we begin with the expert opinion, we have a discussion platform today. I would like to give the floor to an expert, the Vice President of the Center for Strategic Developments Research, Maria Shklaruk. And Center for Strategic Research has been working so proactively for the development strategies for our country, and I think she will give us her perspective. Yes, thank you, but I never jumped off the cliff. I think I wanted to say to Oleg and to my colleagues, I'm going to be involved in one of the process of specific implementations of the change management system, and I feel much more sympathy about sharing everything. Before that, of course, you can see that many details, they present themselves as you go. I would like to share with you my perspective on going back to what Oleg has been speaking about in the very beginning, that it's not only project management, which is important to perceive as the holistic change management system, because the issue is much wider. And then I got an idea about some key questions about building the holistic change management system. Number one, the question is, we have been working okay, why do we need to change? Already on the sidelines, I've heard the same question. Hey, we've been working fine. We do not need all these new fashionable, wigs and fads and changes. Why do we need to change? Why do we need to introduce new practice and methodology of work? We have been doing just fine. This is the problem that many people have been speaking about, that even in good and well-developed organization, at some point in time, these rules and procedures become barriers on the way of strategic projects. And now these functional sub-projects are very painfully being implemented, because we have the practices of work that you've mentioned. There are some functional wells or silos, and in these frames it's easy to build a new functional silo. And this is instinctive feeling of any leader, okay, I'm going to watch it, and we will do it. It's a great project, so everybody is open-minded. Let's build a new functional silo, and we'll fit it in. And of course, it's a big challenge of how to overcome it and how to find that unique recipe which will enable us to do work in a different way, because otherwise organizations will never be successful. And many of our agencies and state public structures, they're not efficient as they are. So any good ideas, having gotten back to the old structure, will be implemented not in a very efficient style, because I've heard about this methodology of evaluating project ranging. I've heard about 1 year, if not long, about this methodology. And again, projects are not evaluated for the ranking degree again. So this national projects are not very specific. We think, we like it, we believe it. Well, I wanted to say about how these national projects are being formulated, but I will not delve into that. Next, second one is, of course, project and process activities, which is a very popular topic. Where do we need to load the projects? Where do we need to load the processes? I think that now we are in a situation where we need to change everywhere. And of course, I would say that the focus of today should be changes of the processes, because there are a lot of inefficient, outdated processes that we have, which of course results in amazing inefficiency in Russia, which is very costly activity and structure, because it goes through state procurements, public procurements, and I think the time has come when the project-based management people are getting into. We see some steps. We shouldn't be lagging behind, because resources to increase the salaries, to increase investments into projects, they are in optimizing process activities. But there is also the item number 3. I will kind of ask you to put the video. It's about what is disruption. It has been done by our colleagues. Let me see. Let me see. We'll try to relaunch it. It's an example of how you could endlessly optimize one of the processes which is taking place today, and many of us have been seeing that, of how with new technologies you could do this absolutely different experience. Let's try to see the video once again. Or maybe we won't. Every year, up to 26 million calls are coming into local police departments, and all of them are being put into the incident log. For the last 16 years, these incidents were given to the officers on duty into the paper log. So to analyze this data was simply impossible. Thanks to built-in GIS system, now the messages are put into a computer. But for a human, it would take a year only to read all of those applications. And now artificial intelligence is coming to help. We've trained a neural network to classify 4.5 millions for 40 categories. In neural network, each word is shown as a vector in each message as a point in the 200, semantic field. So we can understand the content of the millions and millions of messages. Now we know what people are coming to the police to. We can model reaction of the law enforcement officers, and in the future have a detailed data about their crime in real life. This is one of the projects which has been implemented on the level of research work, but it also can be done and implemented in real life, where simply create a new process. Now people say about digital technology, and I would like to point your attention to that if you change your optics and optics of analysis, you can simply do many things in a different way. You won't have to optimize the old processes because they'll be gone. And I think this is the reserve for efficiency. I wish for more projects like that to come, where we will try to see radically new approaches. Next question is how much and how long we should be getting into changes or manage changes. People say, okay, now we have a new department is working, it's all great, why do we need to change again? But as a matter of fact, I think that all those who started a bit earlier, you can see that you may be in a situation where you have a first search of the interest, people got into that, and then without receiving quick results, sometimes people have the resistance to change, and they say, oh, let's go back to the old models, we do not want this new, it's too tough, it's too difficult. And I think that the next stage which we have to see for this whole thing to be overcome and to move into the rhythm of tracing these never-ending changes would be the greater focus on indicators, like you've said, a certain number of formalized, not only formalized, but also the culture dialogue about goals. When it's a quarterly procedure for all the CEOs, for all the top management and their subordinates. Maybe in some way this could be a public thing. This is the situation when we could discuss the topics that has been said and how do we achieve them. Because again, sometimes we can hear and see the heads of the federal executive bodies, and not only those, but also from the government. We can see that people are reporting for different goals. Yeah, sometimes it's a growth of economy, but for example, people are reporting about 22,000 of yards which have been renovated, but it was not the goal in the first place. So people substituting this goal. So people are reporting about something which we didn't want to even change. So it's important to build this right national projects, indicators. Okay, let's speak about the results, and not like we have not done the main thing, but we have done many other great things. Next question is HR cycle. We have to pay more attention to that. It's changes in the personnel management. Now we formally have a strategy. In some agencies they have the mission and the values, but all of this, it has to basically based on this transformation, digital economy, we have to include HR here with new competence, with evaluations, with introducing value-based parameters in the evaluation system. And I hope and believe that we'll have some opportunity at a different forum to share results of a project which has taken place in the Accreditation or Russian Accreditation Agency. Hopefully, we'll hear about that from the head of the agency. It's a project where the values within organization have been attached to the remuneration system. It's a very good system. We have to also use that so that managerial culture would be in charge. Managerial culture and the competences people have should be the defining factor for achieving organizational goals in general. So we have to evaluate it and to tie up to your corporate motivation system. So it's about the personal pool, talent pool or reserve, and also looking for people for the new jobs, because right now it's even difficult. Ask people, could you please look up and sometimes look in the pool, in the staff pool. We have the list of the pool, but if you type it into a system searching for competence and to see, who is good for what, it is impossible. We eventually have to do it also to ensure horizontal mobility. And finally, this last story, what's the secret of success? On one hand, each organization cooks its own recipe of success, and I'm hoping that in the government there'll be also another success story. But the key message is we gotta do it. And here I hope that all these steps which have been taken before that, they won't roll us back, but what is mentioned here will continue. I want to see the next steps. Let's do it in the next year, the methodology of the project selection, and start selecting projects. Let's transform a state program into the budgetary planning. Let's see how the indicators are becoming the way of public accountability, even of the ministers, of what they have achieved. Now let's also make influence on their employment situation. So I'm hoping that a year later, on the next forum, we will be able not about the same things we've been speaking for about 2 years, but let's speak in the ways, okay, we've done that, and now we are seeing the new goals for ourselves. What you are saying will be an indicator of maturity of project management and state management. If we'll move to this kind of approach of evaluating goals, and but on the other hand, it can be the case in the perfect world. I'll explain why. Just to give an example, you are saying about this kind of rolling talent pool and reserve, which is based on some testing. It's always a competition. It's always a competition, and usually the competition is won by ambitious people who want to actualize themselves to do it very fast at the public service. Sometimes it contradicts with the nature of this public service, and director of the department, who is the employer of such a young and ambitious person, you know, like a straight A student, kind of perfectionist guy or gal. Sometimes the boss, the head of the organization, is facing a very tough choice. What shall I offer this very young and ambitious person 1 or 2 years later, when they'll get bored? Then this employee may not be a comfortable employee for his or her boss who is employing this person, because they may have their own opinion, which may be contradictory to that of his higher-ups. So there are some natural complexities and natural resistance to the process, what we've been speaking about in this model. But I'm saying that not because I want to neutralize it, but vice versa. I want to identify it's a right move, very right move, but I have to understand the challenges we are facing on the way to the goal. When we were on our way here, we passed the presentation, which was done by Goznak, the Mid-House. They've presented one of our departmental projects. It's a markings project. I would like to use this opportunity, because it's a forum organized by the Ministry of Finance. We do. So the topics should be also specialized, our Ministry of Finance related themes. I want to kindly ask the head of the project office, Olga Mukhina, who is also the director of the Department of Development of HR Development Personnel, and ask her to share what kind of departmental projects we have. Good afternoon, dear colleagues.
Good afternoon, dear participants. Thank you very much for such an interesting panel discussion. I would like to tell you a little bit our departmental office, the Ministry of Finance. It is concentrated within the departmental projects with participation of the State Project Office and also the Center of Project Manager. And together we elaborated some provision, also a set of recommendation, and started implementation of some project approaches within the ministry. The uniqueness of the office lies within our development processes, including training for the personnel. We have such tasks as, for example, switch over of the so-called cultural attitude to the realization, execution of different tasks for training, for evaluation of the staff performance. And we try to combine both within our activities. We created inside the ministry special entity, which is guided by Mr. Siluanov, and members of this body incorporates members of the ministry, and of course attention from number one of the ministry, as well as other representative of the Ministry of Finance, helps us to generate some interests for this subject. It's very difficult to motivate initially some blocks of the ministers to force them to work with different projects, but it has already turned into a separate trend. We have already allocated 12 key projects. We created some criteria. We didn't want to turn all the activities into a project, so we were quite selective. We analyzed them all separately in order to get all the necessary requirements, to comply with them, and attain the results what stands for the word departmental project? Here is a list of them that was brought to the screen. I would like to start with some of the example of project activities. The first one is a project for the implementation of instruments for electronic certificates for handicapped people, and the provision of some technical vehicles for them, and also technical means. So it's actually all about providing some permits for them. It was initiated as an innovation. So actually we want to create some passports or some certificates that could entitle a handicapped person to get some finance and also self-finance some of the technical means for them. It should be initiated by the person, but it can also be supported by the ministry itself. We see that analytics lead and shows that we can see that the poverty has been going down, but we want to pick the very right addresses and to base our work on the exact location in order to have some criteria as to how the assistance should be structured and distributed. It could help us to improve the quality of the social support. One of the projects that has previously been mentioned is about marking for the precious stones and metals. Right now we have over 500,000 million rubles that circulate within this very domain, and of course we have underground economy and a lot of from those figures that lie within that kind of segment. We want to keep track of all the possible process in order to generate even more contribution going to the Federal Reserve. Not long ago, we also started to work on the contractual direction, and that is why we launched a project dedicated specifically to the contractual functionality. It means that we want to increase the quality of the functions and performance of the product. We want to have certain thresholds that could be used for state procurement for some social and municipal needs. We want to create a document basis. Right now, customers are supposed to do it on their own for state procurements, but at the same time, we can change it a little bit in order to unify the process and to elaborate some common rules. At the same time, identifying the basic goals that could be listed in one single document or catalog. We have one more project that was designed to increase the level of satisfaction for the customers. This is something could simplify the accounting and auditing procedures, and also all the relevant reporting documents that are prepared for that purpose. It means that right now, even though that we have still a lot of requirements regarding different reports, etc., but if we apply this strategy, we can simplify the process. Some of the documents can be submitted electronically, and also some accounting information can be submitted in a more quickly and in a more simple way. We also very much rely on assistance provided by the state. To do that, we need some analytical tools that could help us to develop some optimization mechanism. We need to keep a track of the enrollment and also of all those working within this segment. Some centralization products for budgetary recording. We had a panel discussion dedicated to this very issue. Of course, there is a huge interest for that, specifically this project. The plan is to introduce a unified budget control system and also to control all the expenses that lie within the competence of this segment. Further on, we also have quite a few analytical projects. The first one was designed for tracking tax-related expenses. So actually, the idea is to create a tool to do some optimization and also other actions related to the taxation. Also a project to segregate the branches of power and also power distribution between all of them. It would be nice to create an analytical tool that could help to fully analyze this network and also eliminate some of the discrepancies and contradictions that we have right now there. We need to make this mechanism more perfect to improve the quality of it. And of course, it has already been discussed as part of some of the projects. We want to introduce a new expenses register. This would allow us to extrapolate on that a little bit and also justify some of the costs with, of course, regard to the budgetary system. All those projects are controlled at the top level, and some of them are based on a decree that were prepared by the president. And of course, it is done together with the treasury and also all the departmental establishment within the state. Very good projects, but is it possible to speed up a little bit, specifically number 10 and number 9, because if they are to be implemented, that would become a very good basis for national projects. I mean, a unified cost and expense distribution system, etc. Yes, all the tasks are very important, and these projects were formed and formulated a little bit earlier. So apparently there was a need for some actions to be taken to avoid such words as imitation, etc. Those trends and those directions were chosen. From my perspective, this is exactly what is specifically controlled by the heads, by the supervisor. Apart from that, there are some other lists, also priority lists, etc. for them, but those are the priorities that are the most important ones. And the project format turned out to be the most convenient one for them. Another thing is that the monitoring results might vary. That's exactly what Maria was talking about. Here we talked about quite a strict and well-structured approach to the accounting and reporting. It's also the case over there. You cannot report for anything else. So, for example, to write that something has been done on 1 page and a half, but at the same time remain silent about what you failed to accomplish. This is the difference of this instrument if we compare it between this one and others. No, but speaking about priorities, we have Minister of Finance, etc. But what about a higher level priorities? We have a law for strategic planning. No, I mean, for example, if you have your own project, but can you prioritize between all of them and probably kind of allocate them to a higher level? There might be contradiction with the higher level. So that's what the policy is all about. No, again, but if you see that execution of a project, or for example, standardization of the expenses or creation of a log of customers, there's something that we need to now. We are going to start to do some public spending in the framework of the state programs in 2011. No, but we were also talking about state procurement, etc. But we switched from de facto to the Q&A session actually very smoothly, and that is why I would like to invite participants of the panel discussion and also representative of the regions in order to discuss some regional projects. And also I want you to really be more involved in them, especially when it comes to some initiatives of that kind. We have today here Director of the Department for Information Technologies, Mr. Shiglerov specifically for our Q&A session. Regions and those sympathizing, you have now the chance to address your questions to him. We have Deputy Director for Strategic Planning, Nikolai Belchenko, who is one of the methodologists and developers of the instruments that we so much criticize today. I mean, state programs, etc. He's one of the pioneers and supporters of that approach. There is a risk that projects might repeat the success of the state programs, and apparently we can feel it today. But still, he is really willing and ready to answer your questions. We also have Vadim Vasilyev. You all know him, but he is ready to discuss the so-called regional aspect with you. And Deputy Director for the Federal Office, Alexei Maykov, he will help to answer some questions about competences. Yes, we talk about finance today, about the Ministry of Finance, but we look through the prism of the budget. And we never claim to be a platform for discussing some national projects. No, we need to talk about more down-to-earth issues as to how it should be implemented. Yelena has already worked on that. To make 2011 budget for national projects to reflect some code, to have the proper classification. And yes, so they will be for sure they are willing to answer your question, if any. Yes, so we heard some thesis today. And you kind of finalized that by saying all that. When we talk about state program characteristics, I would like to say that state programs is a very complicated tool. I'd like to kind of defend Mr. Bekchev a little bit. I do really respect this man, and he helps out a lot in constructing that very complicated system. Today, it's important not to step back and not to leave that process aside. We are in an era or a process of transformation. Dmitry Anatolievich, it's very important to make sure that nothing of that kind ever happens to this tool as well. So far, we haven't had any problems. If you have other kind of information, then please, you are most welcome to share it. Of course, there is a lot of bureaucracy within this process. There is no flexibility. I think that it does not really correspond to today's challenges. We have to understand what we are working with. We have a step-by-step plan to change the situation, and I want to put particular stress on the fact that national projects, they are anyhow should be based on state programs. Anton Silanov has reiterated that many times. It takes some modernization. It needs to be aligned with today's challenges. But we should proceed to that straight away. When Maria said that you have been working with different regis and ranking for quite a while, but both the Ministry for Economic Development, Ministry of Finance, within just half a year managed to turn all those projects by the Ministry of Education and others that you were referring to into separate projects. If you take them in your hands and look through them, you will not even understand the whole complexity of them, not to mention that all the federal targeted programs were included into them. That's a very complicated process, and those systems that you offered for segregating those projects, this is something that is not feasible at all. You cannot do it because indicators are different, because tools are different. Thus, for example, executive branches of office, they also should get involved in the process, because it takes comprehensive work, it takes joint efforts to do that. I would like you to focus on that further on, and also to understand that it will take time. We will try to synchronize our efforts. Probably we'll have to amend the deadlines a little bit, procedures. We will try to simplify that deal. But anyway, we are moving in the right direction. I absolutely agree with you, and I would like to support and agree with my colleague. I'm responsible for program number 39 of the Ministry of Finance. In fact, this is an absolutely normal, efficient instrument. It really needs to be simplified, to be rendered more concrete. We have different approaches. It's a little bit maybe too simplified initially, or at least was too simplified, but it takes certain simplicity. So ideally, it would be nice to have 5 programs. That was a real struggle, to fit all the ideas into 5 programs. No, we are not quite there yet. This is just the beginning. Like I said, we want to say that to illustrate our support, we are ready to manifest our intentions. We are ready to be involved in the working process. Yes, we have 5 programs, but we also have some sub-programs with a list of different events and activities. So hence the question of integration. Should our work be integrated into a larger scale activities to be later on decomposed into parts? How can we fit in all those schemes and structures? It's a real challenge, but it could allow us to make state programs as an instrument. It's a very initial impact, just the way it was conceived from the very beginning. That's exactly the way that we have chosen. We don't want to move it a little bit aside from our field of priority. No, we want to make plans, we want to set the right priorities and understand what kind of goals we could really have for the near future. Let's again state that there is no contradiction in terms. The approach was absolutely correct. Just the way this was covered by our colleague. Okay, now, do you have any questions? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm head of the design community at the Penza region. No matter how far you go, still we have to go back. Okay, from the financial point of view, we, yes, have national projects. We worked with the regional projects. They are, yes, have their own national components. Are there going to be any requirements on behalf of the Ministry of Economic Development to include those components in the straight programs? Because Anton and Silanov, half a year ago, only when we started to talk about national programs, we said that we will be tracking all the results, etc. But how are you going to do that in reality? And should those projects be integrated in state programs, or quite the opposite, just for us to understand? Okay, I'll try to answer your question, and then we'll give the floor to Olga Evgenievna, or how should we organize that? If you want to, you can answer this question. Just decide between the two of us. No, but as for your question, I should say that the word project and project-related events, they should be integrated into the state program. They cannot exist in parallel. They we should understand that projects is a kind of a group of events that were designed for a specific priority and goal. They are grouped into one project, or they were given because of this or that project. And of course, they are really controlled. This is the question where you really do some structuring. It should be well formulated, regulated. You should be keenly aware of the methodology put forward by the project office. It's not the people who actually design it, but those who monitor it. We need to monitor work progress, and this process is done not by the project manager, but thanks to the open monitoring system, it is available for the project office for it to make sure that all the science-related works fully comply with the criteria and set requirements. If the providers of works have some issues with it, then there will be an external monitoring body who will be reportable to all the above-mentioned players. On one hand, it will help us to balance the negative distortion, but at the same time, it will help to distribute the burden in a more even way. And if we use a more convenient or suitable products, then of course this burden will be leveled out based on the data about the project. Another question that wasn't raised during the panel discussion but needs to be raised, a reason of reporting for each project. It should be integrated model by model into overall general information related to the project's events. They are all the same and they will be reflected in the state program. So when we introduce some new data regarding the execution of the program, ideally that kind of data should automatically go to the data related to the execution of the state program. Yelena, that was some provocation, but could you somehow comment on that? So, being the director of information technologies, I see no problems with structure and etc. Okay, we have a program perfectly. If we fit in it in the budget classification, great. National, municipal, and other projects, it's absolutely great that we have them. But okay, they fall within this classification. As for reporting, no problem with that from my perspective. I think the problem lies within the fact that our goals are not considered in the budget. But it can be easily explained that for some reason we never have the time to formulate those goals. But whether you want it or not, on the 1st of October, you are supposed to take it on the State Duma. Otherwise, you will be left without budget at all. After that, yes, it starts to run smoothly. Seems like we no longer have this problem. But again, we find ourselves in the month of August and have to make face to pretty much the same problem. It needs to be overcome in the framework of national programs, because today we formulate goals, different events, etc. And we see that unfortunately there is a problem with that. We give a classification and seems like it can already. Now, colleagues, by the way, I want to say that we have finally received classification, and those most curious ones have already had taken a look at that, saw what was integrated into that. It's not information from the Ministry of Finance.
They're looking at the national projects, and the attendance is not very high so far. This pendulum has not swung completely, but the date was September 1st, and now it's been postponed to October 1st. But I believe that it will be all filled in. And Lincoln was absolutely correct. He drew our attention to the fact that October 1st, it's like a new year, it's like Christmas. It comes unavoidably, dear colleagues. We have to take it as a simple life fact. Whether we make it or not, the budget cycle comes, and August comes. And our lives has to be adjusted and fit into this cycle, because all these cells and all your all your dishes and all your festivities for the new year. I'm Alexander Konakov, Central Project Office. Couple of commands to build up on what Azar Mopolinovich said, that it's a ranching topic is not forgotten. We've been working in 1242 and we continue to implement it in national projects. It's addendum number 3 to the passport of each national projects. It's actually arranging federal projects in the status of the national. Speaking that for Maria specifically. Number 2, what I would like to say, October 1st, it was mentioned in Presidential Decree number 204, which clearly states that before October 1st, the project passports have to be a part of the Council. Right now, out of 12 passports of national projects, 4 have been approved. And before the end of the month, we've planned to approve all of them. Despite all of that, we understand it's a very complex job, and for many state employers, it is not a standardized job. And we understand that you cannot do it as a one-off in October. All the projects have been reviewed on the level of Presidium, on the level of the chair of the government, on the level of the vice prime ministers. We've had a number of expert discussions. So I think it's illegitimate to say that the ranging of the project is not being done. And secondly, incomplete passports. Well, formally, incomplete passports simply will not be a part of the Presidium discussion. So the situation is not that bad as it may appear. I would like to apologize, but I want to say that dear colleagues have touched upon a very important topics which we may run into the future, and we have the decree of Anton Kermanich about the monitoring and execution of the indicators for national projects. And we are facing a new challenge. A decision has been changed that this system will be built based on electronic budget system. It is of principal importance for the future that this system or subsystem which will, based on which this monitoring will be carried out, it has to account for all the indicators that have to be traced. But on the other hand, it has to be certain compilation of what we have today in different information systems, JSU system, and our system for where we do our state-run programs. And of course, here we are facing yet another challenge because in the system of e-budget, most of our events, or should I say, there are only events with a budget. As a part of national projects, we have a lot of events without a budget allocated to them. It's a big challenge. We also have the big developments by the Federal Project Office when priority projects have been implemented, and there is a quality system of tracing and controlling, control points or benchmarks. So all the best from these systems, all the best that we have, will have to be implemented in this toolbox. But as of time, we almost are lacking time. But I think it's a solvable issue. It's a solvable challenge. It's an absolutely important issue. It is a very important issue to monitor those indicators which do not require financing, and to monitor the project for implementation. Or let's put it this way, it is not for every event for a particular project money will be or have been allocated, because if we're pursuing the organizing monitoring via electronic budget, then this event, all the events have been included with the number 9. Number 9. If there is a number 9 in a project, then they are part of this whole methodology. The question is methodology of calculating indicators and interconnection between the goals, results, and those reports which will be later delivered for achieving the goals. If we'll be able somehow to formalize that, all of us together, I believe it will be one huge step ahead as a part of implementing state programs, as a part of national programs, and as a part of any of our activities. If we'll be able, on this example, on this life cycle, on this kind of stage, to be able to compare our goals with results, with events which will enable us to achieve them, and then to evaluate it, whether we achieve it or not, at least formally. So far, we do it only empirically. We do it only as a gut feeling, as our own intuition. That's my perspective. Even from this point of view, the project-based approach is very beneficial because now we're looking differently at those processes, day-to-day processes which we have been implementing, and the formats of work which we had been utilizing prior to this. So it's one huge benefit of the project-based approach. Now the Federal Project Office is doing colossal and huge amount of work. They're trying to do exactly that, which is to compare a goal with those events and goal with indicators, because we have the goals, but indicators could be totally different. And it's a temptation. It's a temptation with the project officers, with state agencies. Sometimes they have a temptation. There is one name, but they can put the other indicators which would be convenient for them. Any other questions, please? Any other questions, please? Oleg Yurievich? Now, basically, the answer has been given already. And what I want to say is why the events have to be a part of the state program if you already have a project, but you've already answered. And the second, I think there is we're confused in terms of terminology, because we are dividing state programs and projects. They are complementary because the state programs are elements, let's say, of a project-based approach. It's portfolios, it's arranging, identifying resources for the priority tasks. And then you take these priority tasks and implement them either as projects or as processes, as you wish. They are mutually complementary. As long as these functional silos you've been speaking about, that we stop pulling the blanket to either side, so to speak. Or if we change, we gotta change. Thank you very much. It even tells me that we're always coming back to the same issues of correlation between the state programs and projects, and 5 or 6 times. But now we've spoken through, we've talked through, now we know how to calculate this. And on this very positive note, I would like to finish up our panel discussion. Thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully we've learned something new.
Давайте.